Badger fans, what's next? Let's talk bye-week checklist with Nick Osen. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every single details because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Mazda moving the game forward. Mazda move and be moved. And when we get the good guests on, man, we don't waste time. We get right into it. We got Nick Osen. Thank you for tuning into this, for everybody listening, for making it your first listen every day, for being part of this community. Thank you, Nick, for jumping on the show from 247. This is this is not where Wisconsin football wanted to be, certainly 4 games in. And that Maryland game was more than a loss. It was a bad loss with the way they played. I just want to kind of very broadly, and then we have some questions of what we want to get into. What's next? Like, how does the team move forward from that?
Yeah, Ryan, it's great to be back, man. You know, I've missed you. I miss our guys, obviously Rajiv and Justin. I think I'm getting on there soon, man. So I'm grateful to be here. You know, I know that people like to, whether it's speaking the truth or, mess with me a little bit, give me a little crap. Like, I tend to just approach things optimistically. And obviously Saturday, that was one where there wasn't a ton, to be excited about. And I think my biggest maybe worry in that one, Ryan, was kind of how they bounced back after a loss. It felt like early on, it was just a few plays, but they were moving the rock. And I kind of have not a theory, but kind of something that I observed, man, is I've said it on a couple things this week. I feel like basically seeing the back and forth with the QB kind of position, I think that it really has affected the guys a little bit. And seeing, I think, Billy go down again, I think that was tough. I'm not sure exactly, how he was really feeling, if he was fully feeling great. And so in terms of what is next, man, I think I've had a checklist of 3 things, my friend. I think first and foremost, getting as healthy as possible. Now, is that something you can control? Obviously not necessarily. I think that October stretch is a gauntlet either way. But I think that obviously if you have a guy like Billy Edwards Jr., and he can't just be 70-ish%, right? Don't put him out there then, but 90-ish plus, I think that helps things. So that's number one. Number 2, obviously cleaning up some of the major mistakes. You can't just clean up everything within scheme, roster, and personnel in a week, but some of the mistakes we saw, right? Like the special teams gaffe and the snap over the head. Like those are really, really things I'm looking to clean up. And then 3, and I think you'd agree with me on this, Ryan, it's kind of gut check time. Like I know that we were looking at some of the, obviously questions here prior. And I think that people are talking about, what needs to be better? How can these guys kind of grow from this? We're going to see now. Because obviously my expectations have been changed a little bit, from the start. I think everybody's kind of have to. Bama didn't change things for me. That didn't have to. But then the Maryland game, it's like, well, we kind of had this penciled in as a likely victory. So gauntlet of the stretch, everything we've been talking about, that is kind of my checklist. How do the guys respond? You asked me earlier, there were some questions. If I had to pick, a slight positive, Ryan, I don't think these guys have quit, if that makes sense. I do think the fight, the desire is still there. Talking to the guys, they were very, very upset. We will see how that translates to the field, my brother.
Yeah, let me take down your checklist one by one, and I agree with a lot of it. Let me ask you this first one. I didn't love – I understand the desire to get Billy Edwards out there. I think he's incredibly important, and I agree with your take. I think it's a really good one, that your leader who – really all parts of the team feed off of your quarterback, your offense line, your running game, your receivers, and your defense feeds off your offense. I didn't love the idea of playing 2 quarterbacks against Maryland. I really either Billy's healthy enough to fully go, and then he should be the guy, or you need just to get him healthy. That was just my take on it. You can talk on that if you want, or not. Totally cool either way. But I didn't love that approach. I think they felt under the gun to get Billy out there, which makes sense. But I think that impacted Danny O'Neal as well.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way, to look with that last thing you said, Ryan. I think that what I had heard throughout the week, this isn't even to blame anybody in terms of kind of just expectations and really injury wise, I had heard that things from Billy were actually moving pretty well throughout the week. So I don't think that was necessarily like just a last minute thing, but you're right that they were wanting to get him out there. I think Billy was responding pretty well from what I had heard, maybe not fully 100%, but I just think there is this rough string of luck with those quarterbacks, specifically the top guys. And I'm not sure when kind of that run will end. That is why we've talked about building a guy from within and developing and things like that. But it's time for these guys, if they're going to step up, it's got to come in this next month, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you on the health point. As obviously as healthy as you can get, this is the time to do it. You have a bye week. Be smart. Be careful with players. Get that offensive line as healthy as you can. Maybe that means Renfro's back for Michigan. That's a huge deal. I'll throw one more in here because you hit a couple of my checklists. Actually, two more on my bye week checklist, man. The first one is it might be time to start playing. We've already seen it. A few more of those younger pieces that maybe have a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know the right word for it. It's not hunger. I don't think guys like Rico and Daryl don't. I mean, Daryl Peterson is good this year, but it's just I might want to see a little more Nicholas Clayton, maybe a little more Kairos Gaines, maybe a little more Eugene Hilton. I think it might be time to start mixing in some of those pieces. Mason Posa, which we already saw. Him start to work into that group, right? I might want to see some of those players start to work in. And then my other one is I think they need to simplify just a tiny bit, maybe offensively. Maybe focus on 15 to 20 things that we're really going to do well, 10 to 15 things, and maybe some of the extra juice that Jeff Grimes wants to do and has been successful doing. Maybe with this group of younger players that have been shifted around, maybe we just can't do that right now.
Yeah, Ryan, I definitely hear you on the younger guys. Obviously you saw Mason Posa a little bit earlier than usual, and obviously that was a game. It wasn't just Badgers way ahead late. I thought he performed pretty well too. I think he graded out well with PFF. I think I would tend to agree. I don't think it's a lack of hunger, desire, anything like that at all. And I do think you'd like to see obviously some of the higher moments from some of these guys that have been around. I mean, I don't think this is exactly a lot of what we expected for some of the guys, but like Posa, you mentioned Catalano often. Hilton, I think, is a huge one. I'll throw out a guy like maybe Emmett Borg, though Grant Steck is younger too, and Lance Mason's been terrific. So just some of the younger talent there. But I tend to agree. I think that if the season continues to be in a tougher spot, that could obviously be a real positive to try and judge going forward. But obviously the guys are still going to go with whoever they think can be the most competitive. And I will throw one a little bit back at you, Ryan. Going this next game at Michigan, whether they do win or lose, let's say they lose a close game, what could tell you that things could potentially be progressing or potentially on the right track here within the season coming off a bye?
Yeah, so I love that. I love that question because I don't think the season's over. And I've talked about that a lot. A lot of people have already said, burn it all down. This is terrible. And for those fans, I respect that perspective because it means that people care. When people are that frustrated, it means that they care, right? But I don't think the season's over. I think this is a huge test of adversity and culture in the locker room. And now you can respond. You have 2 weeks to sit on that and respond, right? And that's what I want to see. I want to see response. If you go into Ann Arbor and you play a tough game and they beat you 27-23, 27-21, that shows me right there that A, this coaching staff hasn't lost the locker room, that B, this team still has fight in them. And I can get behind a team that is struggling but has fight. Hell, that's been most of my Phoenix Suns life, is getting down struggle but have fight. So that's what I want to see, man. I don't want to see you go to Ann Arbor and you look up after 15 minutes of gameplay and it's 14-0. Right? You got to fight back now. So that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, coming into the season, I do, sometimes chuckle or push back a little bit. Like even this optimistic viewpoint that I had, like I said, a potential, bowl season, right? If the top guys stay healthy. Obviously they didn't, but also not looking for excuses. So it was like Maryland, you had that one penciled as a potential win. Michigan was always one that I thought they'd have to get one of the first two, obviously, in October. I don't think I went as far as saying that would be a win. I do think Iowa was one that I picked. So I totally agree with you, Ryan. I think I might, slightly a little bit on the offensive kind of execution. in terms of basically getting creative and things like that, maybe trick plays that we've seen from Grimes, I don't think that's what you're referring to, but I think sometimes you still do have to have those, especially when the offense is stalling. But in terms of the overall, overarching kind of mentality, I agree. It's like, basically, guys, we just got to make something work. And I know that one question we'll get to a little bit later will be about the quarterback. I don't know what that is going to look like yet. Everything that I had heard the last couple weeks, that was pretty spot on kind of throughout those respective weeks. And obviously Billy was not 100%, at least from what we saw, or it was a very little thing that kind of sent him out, which is unfortunate. But I was talking with our guy Payne, my colleague, and obviously you're great with Payne Blazevich as well. And John, I think at least the effort was still there, even though the game got away. I'm not defending the score by any means. That was a tougher one to break down and cover in terms of just how they looked. But I think I need to see a little bit more, like you said, offensively compared to defensively, because if there is a tiny saving grace, the run defense has been good. And what does Michigan love to do? Obviously run the rock. Underwood's done a pretty good job with it. Justice Haynes has been terrific. That'll be a massive test.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, in terms of matchups, for a tougher team that Wisconsin's still obviously going to be an underdog for, what Michigan wants to do offensively dovetails into what Wisconsin does defensively pretty well. The one point I'd make and you brought it up, I think we're aggressively agreeing on this, which is a new term that I've come to love. I think we are very similar, but maybe looking at just slightly different. I hear the absolutely idea that Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, you need to try something different to get something moving. I think those work well as a quick change up when you've tried it 3 or 4 times. I think after 3 or 4 times, you've now tipped the defense off that we're going to be gimmicky. And at that point, they're not going to fall for anything. It felt like it went into the bag a little too much, but I also understand what he's trying to do. Like, I got to spark something. After 2 or 3, the safeties aren't coming up to bite on stuff because they know, like, this is the game plan, is where I was at with that.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I'm really intrigued to see, like I said, how they do bounce back. And they've had practices, this week, plenty of meetings. We will see. Obviously, still a little bit over a week out.
All right, let's take a quick second here. We're going to come back. We got a bunch of your questions from the Discord. If you have other questions, put them in the chat. As always, I'm trying to keep up with that as well. And then we're going to follow up with some hoops talk. We got the great Nick Osen on today. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show, and a quick second, as always, to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Today's episode is powered by our great friends over at DoorDash. DoorDash is absolutely incredible for people who maybe are a little busy, maybe people who just need to get some food. They're working a lot, they have kids, college, or maybe people like me who can't cook. I mean, I literally still can't make an omelet. I've tried to make those microwavable mac and cheese cups for my kids a couple times, and I'm mostly in 50-50 on those, and they're the simplest thing. My 11-year-old can make them, and I struggle with them. So DoorDash is great for me. They come through to help get food into my family. And right now you can build up streaks. DoorDash, every Saturday if you order, you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. If you order this Saturday, you keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms to apply. Promo period through 11/18. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. NFL's here. College football's here. Major League Playoff Baseball. Our playoff baseball is coming up. NBA is going to be coming up. What a time to be alive, right? We have crust in the cheese of our pizzas and any sport you want to bet on FanDuel.com. Go get in on all the action. They have an incredible offer right now. If you bet $5, you can win $300 in bonus bets to use across the apps. I've never seen them give $300 away before. So if your first $5 bet hits, you can win $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app on parlays, futures, teasers, spreads, whatever it is. That Wisconsin football over-under right now, total wins-loss for the year is at 3.5. It's a tough one. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, let's jump back into this. Nick, as always, man, I always want to make sure people can find what you're doing. For those who've been lived under a rock, where can they find your work?
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, 247 Sports, Badger 247. Even though it's a bye week, things have actually been pretty busy. With content. My guy Payne did some nice game breakdowns even after a tough game. McNamara had some really good nuggets earlier this week, especially on Tuesday. And I've just kind of been ripping consistent, really recruiting updates. I'll have some coaches and kind of breakdowns and obviously some basketball stuff later in the week that we'll get into. I also just want to note real quick, Ryan, because we were just looking at some of the comments. Somebody had, maybe I misspoke. I said kind of the Alabama game. when I said it didn't change my thinking or didn't move me, that just simply meant I hadn't had that as a win. I saw a comment in there like, oh, that didn't kind of affect my thinking. I just meant coming into the year, I said 3-1. Obviously, in the first month, Bama was not one of those wins. That was all.
Let's hit we got a bunch of comments in the Discord. Let's hit the first one here. And again, appreciate the comments. We're not going to get to every one of them, but I promise you I read every single one of them, so I try to get to them. From our good buddy over at Northwoods. Hunter Simmons or Daniel O'Neal if Billy Edwards can't play? And more important question, does it matter if the offensive line running game don't improve?
Yeah, Northwoods always asks amazing questions. I'll mostly hit on, that first one. I'll toss part of the second one to you, my friend. I personally think, look, I really like Danny O'Neal. I think we've talked about what he can do. He's still super young. But just based on that, I guess, small sample size, you see how things go practice these next 6, 7, 8 days. Obviously, you hope to have a decision before that. But Simmons looked pretty good. I understand it was late. It was in garbage time. But just in terms of maybe facilitating that offense and a skill set a little bit more similar, I personally liked what I saw. I think you need to have both those guys ready. I'm not saying a 2 QB game or anything like that. But I kind of liked what I saw from Simmons late in that one, Herrings. Obviously, he had the nice touchdown to Lance Mason, but just in terms of kind of that quick motion, consistent gains, things like that. I also feel for O'Neal a little bit just because whether it was designed runs or obviously maybe some of the struggles holding it too long, man, he got hit double-digit times one of those games. It's not just on him, not just on the line, nothing like that. But one of those games, I think Payne and I counted between sacks, pressures, and QB runs. He was getting smacked around a little bit.
Yeah, wild stat. I dug this up, and people listening to the show have heard this before. He has 44 carries on the year, counting sacks. Dylan Jones has 35. It's far too many for a 6-foot quarterback. That's really well said. I've hit my Danny or Hunter take on a different show, so I'm not going to belabor that. I'll answer the second part of this. I don't think it matters a ton if the offensive line doesn't play a little bit better, because I don't think either Danny O'Neal or Hunter Simmons, both of whom I think can be successful in the Big Ten if an offense is around them that allows them to be. I don't think either of them can carry an offense in Ann Arbor if the offensive line doesn't play a little better and if you can't run the ball.
Yeah, have to be able to run in a game like that. I mean, that is going to be a game in the trenches. People throw it around all the time, but against the Wolverines, they don't really hide that either. They're not looking to throw the ball 40 times, a bunch of explosive wideouts. They're getting some more talent in future cycles because of Underwood, but they want to get in, lock in 5, 6, 7 guys on the line and just kind of punch it through.
Nick, this is definitely a question for you from KPP. Did the Maryland game affect any of the recruits interested in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I believe that's one of my guys. If the P is, who I think KB, great question. Look, you can never say never in this stuff, okay? So I'm not trying to minimize anything, but based on, you knock on wood, no flips, no decommits, things like that since then. The only flip has been a positive one towards the Badgers. And I talked to some players that, we haven't spoken 9 or 10 times, but like 3, 4, 5, there's kind of establishing a relationship there with some of the recruits. Do I think that recruits are just going to say a bunch of negative things in a story? No, I'm not naive, but just the positive things they did say, the specifics, the desire to obviously want to come back, continue building these relationships. I don't think that one game hurt any of these top targets that I've spoken to. There is a thing, Ryan, that people always say a win or loss doesn't affect things as much, more so a pattern and how you're treated at the game. These guys are still treated, taken care of very well. We'll see how the team bounces back, specifically offensively.
That's well said. Brett, talking about the secondary, would you rather see the secondary be a little more aggressive, maybe risk giving up more big plays, or do you like the way they've been playing it so far?
Yeah, it's tough because that is an area that, I thought would maybe be a little bit better these last couple of weeks. I kind of gave a little bit of, maybe a buffer for Alabama. You're going against a bunch of NFL wideouts. Simpson looked great, but didn't expect some of what I saw against Maryland. So I would say, Brett, I've got no issue with trying to be more aggressive and just seeing if you can be kind of the aggressor, creating more plays for yourselves rather than giving a little bit more space and distance.
I would like specifically for Rico, I would like to see him up and just man press a little bit more and just trust his instincts, trust his read of receivers. Like he's always been really strong with his film study, understanding what receivers want to do. I don't feel like the off zone has been great on him this year. It just doesn't seem like he's in a great rhythm. I'd like to see him at the line of scrimmage a little bit more occasionally, just to see if he can get into some rhythm.
Yeah, and he's established that, like I love what you said, film study and things of that nature. I do think that could lend to more success for sure.
Question here on the offensive line, A2 Badger. Answer whatever you'd like to go with this one. Talking about the decision to start Heinzen, the decision to maybe have Kerry Kadonko ahead of Ryan Corey. Bye week seems like a good time to revisit some of the major decisions that have been made.
Yeah, this is tough because I guess I'll hit on the bye week aspect. Like the Heinzen part, obviously they acted pretty quickly on that change afterwards, right? The shift on the offensive line. From my understanding, like the staff and the guys within the program, I know Jake Renfro specifically told me in Vegas that they really like Ryan Corey. He's one of the hardest workers, just like a lot of those young guys. Like the team's not lacking with that. I think with him, it was, I believe, just a matter of, hey, experience with Kadonko. Like I understand he hasn't necessarily played a ton, started a ton. I'm not saying that, but he's been in the program. And I think Corey was also just getting used to potentially a larger role as well as this system. Now, I forget the numbers from last week, but when he came in Alabama, Ryan Corey actually graded out pretty well. And even Fickle, after a tough game, seemed pretty pleased with him. I reported going in, hey, I think he's going to start this week. Not hearing the best things on Renfro. Obviously, he does. So I think that's one of those catch-22s, Ryan, with the young O-line. It's like, hey, we are seeing some of these younger guys, right? And I mean, these guys know I've covered them since several of their recruitments. I think that there will be a couple NFL players in that group, but it's a spot, as Fickle has said too, you don't often see a ton of 18, 19-year-olds jumping in and being those starters yet. I think this system is great, but I do think, like you said, it can be complicated at times. But that's just a little of my background, A2. I think that spoke a little bit more to the center spot. I don't expect a lot of, kind of revisiting major decisions at this point. I just don't think, you're going to shift a lot without Kevin Haywood.
Yeah, I think the Corey thing too, physically, they really like him. They like his mental side too. But it was just, are you going to consistently snap? They felt better with Kadonko consistently snapping. I think if Corey was a year older, he probably would have started ahead of Kadonko in that depth chart. And I think where
he's your guy for the future, though.
I do too. I like him a lot. We're going to take a quick second here, come back, lace up your shoes, get ready to rip those nets. We are going to talk some Badgers basketball hoops. That's coming up next as we wrap up the show with the great Nick Gostin. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show over at Mazda. Listen, this episode is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. This is the moment. These are the moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is the Badgers' rush defense. Listen, we can talk about some of the issues here and there, but that Badgers' rush defense has been consistently solid, led by Brendan Lane, Parker Peterson, Darrell Peterson, some of those inside linebackers. That rush defense has been legit this entire year. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Nick, let us talk some hoops. I want to start here. We want to hit on a couple recruiting targets to get you out of the show. But I just want to start really quick. What is a storyline or something you're really excited to see with this year's Badgers basketball team? Big picture.
Yeah, man, it's there are a lot of them, Ryan. I know we're looking forward to seeing what happens. Look, I think it's going to be the jumps from the returners, and my mind goes specifically to JB, Winter, and Janicki. I think we've talked before about some of the young guys. There are a lot of big name transfers, 2 or 3 big name transfers. Obviously, a collective group, but just checking in. I mean, who are going to be kind of the straws that stir the drinks? Obviously, going to be some of those top returners. I've heard Blackwell has taken yet another jump. I know he's somebody that does want to get to the NBA sooner rather than later. Obviously, you can say that about most players, but declared this last year, obviously came back with the program. So those are the guys I'm really, really intrigued to see around. I think there are probably 4, 5, 6, 7 as we sit here in September, just some really good storylines already.
I love the returning starter jump that you talked about. I think Nolan Winter is in for a tremendous year. I think Nick Boyd coming in is going to unlock parts of John Blackwell's game. There's layers to John Blackwell's game as a secondary playmaker that is different than what he had to do last year. I think Nick Boyd is going to unlock. And then the other part of this, and I think I've talked to you about this a little bit. I've mentioned it a little bit on the show. I'm going to do a deep dive on this. Nick Boyd's really good in the pick and roll. He is really, really good. He manipulates it. He understands pace. He understands the spacing of it. And he didn't have the space at San Diego State that he's going to have at Wisconsin. His pick and roll game could go next level with all the shooters here. So that was a lot of answers that I'm excited for, which tells you I'm excited for this team. But, dude, Nick Boyd coming in, I think, unlocks a lot offensively here.
And from my understanding, Ryan, checking in around the program, we got to see it a little bit, too, at that 1 or 2 practices. His speed, too, man, is going to be kind of a game changer, especially in transition. When you've got, him and Blackwell kind of running on the edge. Obviously, you won't have a guy like Tanjay, but just some of those great guards. Again, I've heard Winter has taken almost another step as well. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I know a spot that we want to see with our own eyes is kind of some of that post defense, but just the way this offense is humming or could be humming with a lot of what we've heard, it's going to be fun to cover.
Let's hit on, I know we got to get you out of here. I always try to be super respectful to the time. Let's hit on a couple of those key recruiting targets that Greg Gard has been communicating with. I don't know if you want to go to that 2027 in-state class.
Yeah.
Loaded. Where do you want to go with recruiting right now?
Yeah, Ryan. So I'm very fortunate. I was invited. So I went last week to the Team Hero Fall League. That's got, I think, 3 Badger offers right there. Donovan Davis, Dooney Johnson, and Deuce McDuffie. And then Jack Conan is also involved in Team Hero. The other offer within the state is Jalen Brown. And so I've been fortunate. I think I did interviews with just all those 4 guys in the last week. And I'll catch up with Conan here soon. I'd like to say a couple things. I think that a topic nowadays, and it's not wrong, but it's one that I've always pushed back a little bit, that, all that matters now is the portal and getting old. Do those things matter? 100%. But when there's a class like this in the state of Wisconsin, now they're playing this kind of, sexy style of basketball, like a little bit more high scoring, certainly a little bit more positionless. I think it's a lot of fun. And I can tell you, confidently, I'm not saying all these guys are going to end up Badgers. Obviously, they're not going to take 5, 6 high school guys, and guys are going to go elsewhere. There's some real competition for a lot of these. Indiana, Marquette, Iowa State, Gonzaga, like some heavy hitters. These will be recruitments that will have to be won, and not just kind of guys that aren't getting a lot of looks. But I love, Ryan, the efforts that Gard and Isaac Wodajo and Sharif Chambliss, Lance Randall, Eli Wilkie, Joe Kravenhoff, Mark, like the entire staff is doing right now to get these guys lined up on visits. Donovan Davis, top 45 kid, was just here. Dooney Johnson, top 40, 41 kid, locked in a visit. Conan's coming. Jalen Brown is coming for the Iowa football game. Deuce McDuffie's expected this fall. So it's like they're breaking these things down. Okay, they went and saw them this summer. A bunch of the guys are at camp. Now they're getting early football visits. These things all matter, or at least they should as things go along. Great kids. A bunch of people on my boards just talk about, money, NIL. Like, will that be a factor? I'm sure it usually is. But the only factor, no. I will push back a lot on that. Got to know these kids a lot. Obviously, fortunately, got to cover Team Hero this summer out east. And I just feel like the Badgers have a good shot to be at least in it for a lot of these guys. I understand fans will just be happy if they end up here. But the assertiveness and the recognition of the talent and going for it right now, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I love that crop. I've talked to some people who think this is as good of an in-state crop as Wisconsin has had in several years, and the Badgers are firmly in the running for a couple of those players. JB says, think about this. Patrick Ewing was 7 foot, 240 pounds at Georgetown. Winter is 7 foot, 245 pounds right now. Just saying. Confirmed. Owen Winter is the next Patrick Ewing. Will Hanna says, Nick is good. His wife is sleeping. Told him not to bother her. He has all night to be on the show. That's from Will Hanna.
I like Will a lot, by the way.
Will's good, super good people. I think that's it. Oh, and I did want to hit this one. TG, who's been in the chat, he says, where's the Star Wars guy? We did a call-in show yesterday. Chris called in, and he was super fiery, and he was awesome. TG, Chris is in the chat. He's just in here under Scott, so he's in here as well. Nick, man, phenomenal stuff. Appreciate you as always. Thank you.
Do we want to hit a couple more questions maybe to hit?
I've got, we can do. I always try to get you out with your time. So.
No, I appreciate you. I think she's still wrapping something up before we watch a little show and I wrap up another story. So we got time for a couple.
Dude, I love. Let me ask you this then, because this is a question that came up the other day and I posed it to a couple people. how deep do the Badgers go this year basketball-wise, and what does that bench potentially look like? Because we know what the starters are, right?
Yeah.
We know the starters.
Yeah, you got a pretty good idea. I'll give
So,
you
who on the defense comes in and plays? Because I got to 9, and I realized guard's not going to play 9, usually.
So, real quick, just who got you to 9?
So I got my starters, which just to recap for everybody, it's the 2 returning Blackwell Winter, then you have Rapp, Rhodey, and Nick Boyd. So there's 5. And then I think Janicki's going to play for sure.
He will.
I think Carrington is absolutely going to play. So that gets you to 7. I think Bialuskis is going to play, which gets you to 8. And then I think Garlock's going to play as a backup 5. That's 9. But that means Kins. It means Elijah, another transfer coming in. It means nobody else from this class like Hayden. So
Hayden Jones, yeah. So where I'm at, look, man, I think he'll generally play, the 9 early in the year, and then obviously it shrinks to 8 usually, right? For a lot of Big Ten and certainly March. But Ryan, from what I've heard, man, I will be pretty surprised if you don't see at least a Hayden Jones or Zach Kins in the mix early. Okay, we're going to see some practices, very grateful, just like we do with football. So we'll have a better pulse. But just from what I've heard, kind of through back channels, just checking in with the program, and then guard not being shy about kind of going on a little bit in a very positive way about Garlock, who you mentioned, as well as Hayden Jones. I don't want to mess up the quote, but it was very, very positive about Jones, which I had also heard. I think you're going to see some young guys, and I've heard that Kins has impressed a little bit too. So I think you're going to see, man, I mean, I don't think this is a crazy hot take. At least in some of those early games, I bet you see 2 or 3 of those freshmen, like AB Bialuskis, like you mentioned, who looks a little bit more advanced. And I think we both thought this spring it's going to be intriguing. And I think my biggest concern, you could say it's about any team, I get it, but we were kind of ahead of the curve probably 2 years ago when I started, you and me. I think guard's finding his sweet spot in this era, right? The talent is here. They spent very, I'd say not frugally, but very well. A lot of thinking going in. It's to either bring in elite guys or bring your talent back, of course. I think my biggest concern is just really going to be health, because it seems like throughout the last couple of seasons, fortunate compared to many programs, but it's like there's a stint or two where just somebody's missing a couple games. It happens, but you hope that, this team can stay relatively healthy, because as we said about October for football, that February run, Ryan, that's a tough stretch. I mean, a lot of good teams out there could lose maybe 3 games in a row in that stretch and still make a great run.
Yeah, Bo says it's they have a decent team, but it's going to be tough to replace Tanjay. Yeah, no joke there. No joke there at all. Nick, let me finish on this one then maybe. You talked about your biggest concern maybe being health. My biggest concern outside of health, because health is always its own kind of like bucket. There's a couple guys in this team you can't lose. You can't lose Winter. You cannot lose Nolan Winter. You cannot lose. I don't think you could lose a couple guys on this team. Outside of that, bigger concern for you, defense or interior rebounding? Because I do think losing Steven Crowell, I know, listen, there's already people in the chat that have been like, when is Ryan going to mention Steven Crowell and how much we're going to miss him? Right now. I'll do it right now. You are going to miss him on the inside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we were both Crowell guys. Man, that's a good question. I still think I would probably lean the rebounding a little bit more, just because I know that, guard and the staff are very adamant. Yeah, you can do these things offensively, but you have to be able to defend to see the floor, or at least be able to defend within the system, right? And rotations and being smart within that. I'm not overly concerned in this moment, but I understand if there were, a spot or 2 to pick pairings, I think those would probably be what I'd allude to as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I would go rebounding as well. Nick, go check him out at 247. If you'll see my camera moving, it's because my camera came alive in the middle of the show and now it's tracking me. Is what it is, man. The beauty of live shows. Go check out Nick 247, all the work he does there, and his great team, obviously Payne and Johnny Mac as well. Go follow him on Twitter. For everyone that's been here, thank you. Humbly, thank you for being part of this community, for being part of this show on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk later.